Jimmy Yasil is a recovering addict and also the actor who made his debut in a social film, Chitwai, and in a docudrama, Jimmy You Can Do It. He shares with us about his past.
Uh, my experience as an actor in these two films, uh, it was a privilege in the first place to act in such social films. Since I'm also a recovering addict, to act in social films with very strong social messages for the viewers to watch and to learn from it. It was a very inspiring experience. Both the films were true stories, so I had the opportunity and represent all the recovering addicts in the country as an actor. In both the characters, I was a substance abuser. So since I myself is a recovering addict, I thought while I was acting in those two films, I felt like I was reliving my past life, where I used to abuse drugs, all that which are depicted in the films are actually what really happened in my in the past, in my life. When I first started abusing substance, I think I was 12 years old. At first, I just started. I just started with my friends, thinking it was fun. But as time passed by, I was caught in the web of addiction, and I could not come out easily. I had to undergo so many difficulties, like withdrawals, even hallucinations, and I nearly died because of that. So it was actually not that fun once you are really into it. Yes, I did relapse. I was in a rehab. I stayed there for 3 months, and then when I came out, I was sober and clean for a year, and then again I relapsed. But again I'm back in the right track because of my counselors, my personal counselors. They were very supportive, and they were always by my side, guiding me, and now I'm strong. Yes, it is possible for a person to recover because they are living examples. When we went to India for a convention, I saw a man who was 70 or 80 years old, and he was clean and sober for more than 50 years. Yes, more than 50 years. So by looking at them, we feel it is possible for someone to recover and get recovered in his lifetime. Actually, in Bhutan, I think the highest sobriety, the person who has the highest sobriety would be 10 to 15 years. And and he will be known as a recovering addict until and unless he dies. Only after his death, he will be known as recovered if he dies clean and sober without alcohol or drugs. So only then he will be known as recovered alcoholic or an addict. The support from friends and family are very important, since addiction is a family disease. The whole family gets affected if a member of their family is an alcoholic or an addict. The whole family suffers, has to go through all the difficulties, all the problems that the addict creates. So the family support is very, very important. And in my case, I had both the support from my family. They were very supportive, and especially my mom. She was very, very supportive. She would be always with. She would always be there for me, and support me. She would always encourage me to do good things, and she's always positive. Whatever I do, she would be always positive. She would be always giving me positive advices, saying that you can do it, and then one day that you will do great things in life. See, and I feel that the family and friends support, especially the friends and friends also. If you hang out with your old using friends, I think there are high chances for you to relapse also. So you have to be very careful in choosing your friends as well.
Addiction has been declared as a chronic brain disease by the World Health Organization. Drug addiction is long-term compulsive drug use. The person may attempt to stop using drug but repeatedly return to drug use despite physical, emotional, or social harm. Drug dependence means that the body has begun to require the drug in higher doses to have the same effect and to avoid withdrawal symptoms. According to Bhutan Narcotics Control Agency, in the last 14 years, over 4,900 people have been arrested in cases related to narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. And youth comprises almost 90% of the total abusers, of which students top the list of offenders, followed by unemployed youth. As cannabis is widely found in the country, marijuana is the most abused substance, followed by pharmaceutical drugs and solvent. There has also been a significant rise in the number of female substance abusers. While most women abusing alcohol are said to be in their early 30s, most of them are from failed marriages.
My name is Ishpemo. I'm from Toshkang. I'm 33 years old. Komata jang cho jang feeling pa kam ni cho zim gang karang sing me feeling pa gi sing ni one ani jang oma sak pa katang to feeling pa gi chot pa no turani ne phyak sarum ne om lek putura legi sa ani minila malam atakin da ro kilek pani atakin sing mata cha lek pan kot ko ni usagen sing mala ro gi jang usagen la lansam gai ro kitup thanjung ma jang 3 months lansam da lus kalak te kila ro kitup thanjung ma me nyata gela jang hangtalinim omopturani jang nyata deni tata deni police ka bu complainant got pa hangtaran got pa ni police pa ke mai unumala dang police pa ke bone rang ekana optur omna las kala waksa ke leren la me jang ata waksa ke leren palanang dugla ti jang apa ek ni ba ana ama ek ni ba ana thurgila jani dero chinik singa ek pachi jang waksa ke le chana waksa ke leren pa ek pa jang omro ching paru ga chuncha chang paru dewa gelam pra khot ki nana gyan gawa ni oma waksa khot ki nana kam rangcha yuja makam ni minani yuja ma song da kan sem katang re ni ha sem shin chwa bu sangla elam song sem shiwa lo hang awalo ani jamni unuzani ale mangyola ani jamni la hard drinks again la bottle thulong jam choji bottle thurgi adha ga rian kang te lakam 2 bottles tenani nunu pura jam lani heavy jam ne ta sim control ne hai ne lani jam ne la 1-2 pack sham than adha ga control ani rangi rang onu limitation to hospital ni mini dikpu mala ani mina mene anela ai song sho shu jam de la examine gyola me sabaki hang da bura ale ga chances la jang tha docking center ka tha staff gumini neuna legi ne rokte ba ke ana ming hangila lo ne jimcho ani jija mingi shigila ne pa rokte ba tha rani jang ngam thor rani ni tena ni rokte ba ke cho na ni jujam ne on cho ne la marik pa unda bu gila jujam ga kor ka ek pe cha dang ni onen gila na ngamo nu ga gila na ni rani jang tham meeting ga ne attend an got pa kam ni songola daw ma daw jaksila hang da brang e khan shona sebangi gap ni gana sebangi la e jujam choni bai unu ge ai unda bona na uni unda ba ona ai selumala ni lani ni oni ade ke ja gyola rang buni ju tur control ale renila lekpila ni mini jang unu ge unan cha jang day by day jang control ale try cha jang to fully uni delega uncha hopcha hai ne la jang mep ma dela ni jang taliani shu ken genala therbar thale renila jang unu hang da chodup mo ani mangi cha chodup ken lok ni jang tan lok ni lale ani min cha jang.
An addict goes through 10 days of detoxification before he is sent to a rehab center. Drug detox is to rid the body of toxins accumulated by drug use. It is also said love, care and compassion is required to treat the disease. To inquire more about addiction and problems related to it, I decided to meet Lama Shenphin Sangpo, who has been working with the youth and substance abusers in the country. Yes, Lama, I believe like most youths who are into addiction, they are in a denial state. So why is that, La?
I think nobody really wants to admit that we have a problem, no? I mean, it's like when we have a stomach ache or toothache, we don't want to go to the dentist or the doctor. We always think it will go away. We think, oh, it's not so bad. I think that's human nature. So, you know, nobody says, oh, I've got a stomach ache or I've got toothache and, you know, I'll go to the dentist, I'll go to the doctor immediately. We think, oh, it'll go away. I'll self-medicate, things like that. I think that's natural. And I think it's the same with addiction. People believe that, oh, it will go away. It's not that bad. I'm not really an addict. So I think that's part of our nature as humans, that we don't want to seek professional help immediately. We think we can deal with it ourselves.
Yes, Lama, why is it necessary to convince addict like addiction is serious, and then how difficult is it to convince them?
That's the first step, because if a person who's drinking or taking drugs a lot is not convinced that they've lost control, which means addiction, then they won't seek help. At that point they'll think, oh, it's okay, I can manage it, I'm not an addict. So you have to use certain techniques, maybe certain questions, to make them understand that they really have lost control, they are an addict. And then that the next step is to convince them that they need professional help. Because what normally happens is the first stage is they don't think they're an addict, because they slip into it gradually and they always think, oh, I can stop by myself. I'm not addicted yet. So first you have to convince them, yes, you're an addict, but it's okay. Being an addict does not make you a bad person. It just means that you have to face some situation, face reality. I give an example. If you're driving from Timbu to Bhutan, for example, and you got to Semtukar, instead of turning left, you got right. So the addict is going right, and at some point you have to convince them that they're going in the wrong direction. Yeah? I mean, the direction makes that they want their lives to be peaceful or whatever, and to come back. So that's the first step, is to convince them they're going in the wrong direction. So you have to use certain techniques or certain questions to convince them that they really do have a problem and that they cannot stop. So there are certain questions like checklists they can do. Also you can ask them, okay, you try and stop for a month, try and stop for 6 weeks and see if you can do it. And usually then, of course, they cannot, and then they get a little bit doubt, that they get a doubt that they have a problem. And then the next stage is they say, okay, maybe I am an addict, but I can stop by myself. Then you have to convince them that that's not possible. So the example we often use is like, say, having a toothache. So a person who takes a lot of sugar maybe has a toothache. It's not their fault, they got into something and they lost control. But they do have to see a dentist. It's not going to go away. And it's not their fault that they cannot stop toothache by their own will. It's not their fault, that's the nature of the disease. So addiction is also a disease, and you cannot stop it by your own will. So again, we have to use a lot of examples to convince them that they cannot stop addiction by themselves. They do need professional help. But to make them understand it's not their fault, it doesn't make them a weak person that they can't stop by their will. It's just the nature, it's a disease like any other disease. So those two steps basically, and then next to convince them to go to rehab.
Laszlo, is drug addiction or alcohol addiction, does it require professional treatment like any other chronic diseases?
Yes, definitely, yes. If they get, say, for example, alcohol, if you stop suddenly by yourself, it can actually be dangerous. You can get a seizure. So you really do have to go to detox. For drug addiction, if they go through the withdrawal, which is very tough, it's very unlikely that they'll get through all the pain themselves. But even if they do, for example, if they got locked up in jail and they go cold turkey and then they stop using, when they come out, they're very likely to start again because they don't know how to stay clean. Because in rehab basically is only a place to teach them how to stay clean. It's like going to college. So without those skills, without that knowledge, they're not going to make it, basically. They'll go back to old habits when they get confused, when they get depressed, when they get lonely, when problems arise. Like all of us, we run for our bolt hole. We try to find somewhere secure. And for a recovering addict, that will always be drugs or alcohol. So it's essential. I would say it's almost impossible to stop a chronic addiction without having professional help, meaning rehab.
Yes, and Lama, I believe like most addicts, they are quite afraid or reluctant to visit the rehab. Why is that so?
I think there's a misunderstanding of what a rehab is. I think there's a stigma. People say, oh, he's been to rehab. or it's like going to a hospital. Of course, nobody wants to go to a hospital. Nobody says, okay, this morning I'm sick, I'm going to see the doctor, or I've got a toothache. Nobody wants to. But I think basically we should maybe change the name of the rehab, because to me, a rehab is more of a place where you learn life skills. If you go to a boarding school, for example, you learn math, science, geography, whatever. And in a rehab, it's only the first few days you actually go through the withdrawal and then the medical side of it. After that, you go to classes and you learn about addiction, how to stay away from drugs, how to stay away from alcohol. And the common program is the 12-step program. So over the period of the rehab program, you learn that, and then you can also use it to help others. So I like to call rehab a kind of a life skills college. Of course, you're not free to roam around, but it's not a jail. It's more like a boarding school. You can't go out, you can't go roaming at night, but they have activities. They have baseball or basketball, and then you go to classes. And you clean the dormitory yourself. It's more like a boarding school.
So basically, it's like a school.
So I think people are like a school. So I would say people are afraid to go because it's a misconception. Maybe they see it more like a jail, and it's not that. It's not like a jail at all. It's more like going to a life skills college. And I tell the guys, when you go, it's not just about keeping yourself clean. You will learn skills that you can help others in the future. You can advise others also. So it's a very useful thing. So even for like non-addicts, I think perhaps they could also go and learn these skills.
Yes, and then I believe today is it's all over the news that there is extreme shortage of rehab facilities in the country. I think right after detox, first you're detox, right? And then right after detox, you're supposed to go to rehab. So detox takes like 10 days, I believe.
Usually, yes. Usually.
And then after that, you're supposed to go to rehab. But yes. I believe there's shortage of rehab centers in the country. So usually there are like so many people in the waiting list, and then most of the addicts, I believe, they have to go back to their homes after detoxification.
If they want to stay in Bhutan, yes, we got YDF facility in Serbetang, and then Chitimpendi has one in Paro. There is a waiting list, yes, and yes, if there is a gap between the detox and the rehab, there might be a possibility of relapse, in which case they will not be allowed into the rehab. But a lot of the guys go out to places like Siliguri or whatever, and then they do the rehab there. Therefore, when they go to Siliguri or the Indian rehabs, they don't have to do the detox here. They can do it immediately there. So that's also an option.
Yes, and then Nama, how important is it for an addict to have support from friends and family during his recovery?
Oh, it's totally important. We call addiction a family disease. So when they come back from rehab, they should hang out with recovering friends only, which we call the fellowship. They should definitely not go back to hanging out with the old user friends. In fact, we even recommend they change their SIM and start a whole new group of friends. Family is essential. The family have to understand the nature of the disease. So I advise the families not to nag them when they come back, not to go on about the past, but to try to slowly encourage them to get into some kind of work. Not immediately, but within a short period of time, within a month or two, they should start getting into work. And they should choose work that gives them a dignity. Like if they work at a nice hotel, for example, they have a discipline. They have to keep their nails clean. They have to keep their physical clean, they have to keep their hair clean, so that discipline is there. So they should try to find them a job which is appropriate. They should not put them in situations where they are exposed to alcohol or drugs. And if the family themselves drink, then they should not be drinking around the addict. They have to realize that. They should not put any triggers up. But I think it's important for the family to accept that their son or daughter, sister or brother, whatever, has made a mistake, and that's all they've done. They're not a bad person. They shouldn't continuously nag them and go on about what they've done in the past, because at that time they were lost. And now they should encourage them to come forward and to move forward in their lives and be very supportive. We should encourage the families or educate the families, maybe through programs like this, on how to look after. But I think that's important, to keep the family base, not to go too far into the institutional line.
And then Lama, generally it is noticed that most abusers are between the age of 20 and 30. So what could be the causes? Is it because of unemployment or family problems?
I think from my experience, I notice a lot of family problems. I see a recurring case where the kid will say that it's a stepmother or stepfather problem. I hear that a lot. I've not done research, but when I talk to the kids, I say, how is your situation at home? Oh, my stepmother's not caring, my stepfather's not taking care. And then, of course, dropping out of school, not wanting to go home. When you don't want to go home, you hang out with friends. When you hang out with friends, if your friends are using drugs, then of course you use drugs. So I would appeal to anybody who's a stepmother or stepfather, please consider that child as your own. I mean, they're little children, and please don't discriminate.
Yes, Lalam, I actually met with some of the counselors, and then they were telling me, like, most of the cases they deal with, 70% they have noticed like it's a family problem.
Yes, usually. Family
so do you feel it's in a way culture, Bhutanese culture, we are not very expressive, we are not very affectionate, like within the family, so could it be family also?
I think expression is okay. I think people understand that how the families here interact. Maybe they don't do the Western thing of hugging, maybe they'll scold. As somebody was telling me recently, in the West, if a kid gets lost and then comes home in the West, they'll give him a hug and cry, and then maybe in Bhutan they say, oh, how come you got lost, and scold them. But I think the youth understand that.
Yes.
I think the youth understand that. That's a cultural thing. I think we should not have to change that. I think in Taiwan also they don't have traditionally a hugging culture. But I think, to be honest, the families need to maybe start families later, I would say. I see a lot of young girls who are getting children and they're not ready for them. They get in a relationship. Within a year I see the guy saying, this is my girlfriend or this is my boyfriend. Say, oh, okay, good, you've got a boyfriend, you've got a relationship. Then next thing she's pregnant, and then within a year she's had the child, and then they're divorced. And then if she is not educated, or he or whoever gets the child, they take another partner because of economic reasons or to help with the child. And the next partner may not be appropriate to look after the child. So I would suggest through education we tell the kids to try first to stay in a relationship longer, until you get to know that person, until you really understand that, you know, that you are suited to each other. And then if you do decide to get married, then at least wait until you are settled, till you've got a good job or you finished your education and a little bit settled, maybe got an apartment or whatever, and then have a child, not the child at the beginning. Because I see a lot of children are coming maybe too early, before the parents are ready for them. And so you don't blame the parents, they're just immature and they don't know. And then that child might be the next generation of addict because they were not cared for. So I would say later, keep the kids, try to persuade the children through school to have longer relationships. Yeah, don't have a child at the beginning.
Yes, and then Lama, I believe like there has been so many substance abuse cases in schools as well. So I believe the government hasn't really done anything for the schools yet. So what are your comments on this?
There are counselors in schools. The counselors I've met have been very good. I mean, I like them. They're very helpful. And also the principals are very supportive. So maybe more counselors, I don't know. And maybe to make the kids understand that the counselor is not part of the system. Because a lot of kids say, oh, I don't want to talk to my counselor because they'll tell the principal or they'll tell my parents. So maybe they should just put out the message more clearly that the counselor will keep the kids' information private. Maybe that is not coming out. So, because although the counselors are very good, it's just the kids' apprehension, afraid that the counselor will inform the parents. So maybe the counselors have to, or the schools have to inform the kids that the counselors, any information going to the counselor will be kept private. It will not be shared with the parents of the school. And therefore the kids will be more willing to come forward maybe. But I've seen the counselors and the principals of all the schools I've dealt with in Thimbu have been very, very supportive, very helpful.
Yes, Lama, and then as per Buddhism, is it sin to abuse drugs or drink too much alcohol?
Well, Buddhism, we don't actually have the concept of sin. We have the concept of le, karma. So basically, any action which is done for the self, basically selfish, will have a negative result because it, in the deeper sense, it perpetuates the wrong view of an individual self, that we are an individual, separate individual self, and we try to protect that through various means. So anything that's trying to protect the ego or protect the self will have a negative result. And anything that goes against the ego, such as helping others, benefiting others, will have a good effect. So drinking or taking drugs will have some negative effect, yes. But the action they do under the drug or alcohol will be less because they're out of control. But maybe you could use the example, for example, if you're driving a car, even legally, If you're driving a car and you hit somebody who jumps in front of you from a mountain and you kill them or hurt them, you won't get a murder charge because it was not your fault. But if you were drinking, of course, if you did it on purpose, then it'd be a murder charge. But if you did it under the effect of alcohol, it might not be a murder charge because you're out of sense. But you did know that when you drink, there's a possibility you can hurt people. You do know that. So there will be that consequence. There will be a negative result because we know when we take drug or alcohol that we are liable to hurt, especially drugs like nitrosin, N10. Especially if it's mixed with alcohol, there's a very high chance that that person will cause problem for others. So they know that, so there will be a negative result.
I think that's it, Ladan. Thank you so much for
thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Sonam. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sonam. Thank you.